for almost 20 years. And what I've learned is some great communication techniques. And one of the things I found about people as a whole is that they struggle with communicating with their relationships and with their partners. So, and I also realized that I came from, my parents were married for over 40 years until my mother passed. And I have aunts and uncles that were married 40, 50, 60, 75 years. And that was a huge tradition in the neighborhood where I grew up. And so hadn't seen that many single parents until I got to college. It just wasn't part of where I grew up. What saddened me is that, you know, I got to be 30. I'm older than that now, this was a few years ago. But when I got to be 30, I wasn't married, and I kind of was a little distraught because it was not at all what I had expected. And so when I went back and started to analyze what was different from me and my parents, my cousins, and some of the other people, was what was I doing differently? What was I doing right? What was I doing wrong? And I realized that there were some major things that we had adapted in the African American community that were limiting my belief systems. The whole, what I call, I don't need a man syndrome was one of the major things that did it. And so it took me almost 2 years to get up the courage to write what was at that point a Facebook note post, because I didn't have a blog at that time. And it was called Memoirs of a Fool, How Women's Live Ruined My Life. And I talked about the concept of how, when I brought into the I don't need a man, I gave men a social castration. They didn't realize, I didn't realize that what I was doing. I bought into the Donahues and I bought into the Oprahs and I believe, and then I realized, in the famous words of Malcolm X, I had been hoodwinked and bamboozled and led astray. And so now, BlackLoveForum.com is a website that focuses on building positive relationships in the Black community. And what my focus is to reverse all that negativity that we've been spouting for the last 30 years, and let's focus on the positive relationships. Let's focus on the positive things. So Memoirs of a Fool is now being made into a full-blown book. Amen. We have a website of 21 bloggers that blog about 18 different topics, from marriage to living single to divorce. Mine specifically, Live, Love, Communicate, focuses on the plight of the single woman in your preparation for marriage. I dealt with some demons. I had low self-esteem. I had anger issues. I was an ABW, an angry Black woman. I dealt with a lot of things that were my issues and my fault, but I made other people responsible. So accountability and responsibility are a big part of this process of growing. What I realized is that I didn't have to come to the table perfect. I just had to show up. And so what I say is, now everybody that comes to BlackLoveForum.com, come visit the website, but emotional nudity is required. Emotional nudity is required. Come damaged, come broken. Let's find a way to fix it, live, love, communicate, and most of all, love healthy. Okay, so I'm just going to say mistakes that Jay made, okay? I'm going to tell you the mistakes that I made as being an ambitious, extremely ambitious woman. The first thing that I used to do, and I'm talking about from the dating phase, is where I made a mistake, is all my accomplishments were the topic of the conversation. They became a piece of it. So what I did was, instead of letting him get to know who I was as a person, he got to know what I had accomplished. So that was the first mistake that I was making, because in many cases, he still never got to know who I was as a person. And so when I hear women say, you know, I find men that are intimidated by my degrees, well, why does he know how many degrees you have on the second day?
Whoa.
Yeah, but when someone is asking, they don't really want to know. Okay. They don't really want to know the whole story. You know, they really just want to know if you've been educated or isn't. And see, that's something else. We don't know how to date. We don't know how to date. We don't know the whole getting to know you process. Where I went to school, sometimes I'll talk about where I went to school, but I certainly won't say how many degrees I had. I certainly won't tell you that I worked for 6 Fortune 500 companies. I just won't tell you that kind of information, because at the end of the day, for someone who might not be as accomplished, I might miss out on meeting someone who's a really good, down-to-earth guy who just learned how to fix cars with his uncle. Right. You understand what I'm saying? And so let me talk to him. And so there's a different type of intellect that we have to have, that interpersonal intelligence. And I didn't have a whole lot, but I'm getting better. That interpersonal intelligence is meeting people on the level where they are, okay? That means talking to them on the level where they are. So sometimes we have, as women, we have to pull back those accomplishments and talk to them about, you know, our love for our children. I love for our family, what we like to do on our day off. Those are the things that kind of get a person to get to know who you are. And then later on, when they start to see these things unfold like a flower, when these things start to unfold, then they become impressed. But by then, they've already gotten a connection. So we don't focus so much on the connection. We put so many things out there in front of us that leave this big gap and this big barrier that people can't actually get to us here, okay? We live from here. We live, love, operate, and communicate from here. So why is my education level out here? It keeps people from getting in. So that's my thing. Did anybody have a question? BlackLoveForum.com.
Thank you. All right, here's my question. This is for the panel and you guys out in the audience. Do you think there's any value in saving yourself for marriage these days? Because quite often, I'll date women, and I won't be able to determine if I marry you, so why should I save myself? To wait to have sex, to marry you. You see what I'm saying? So why would I do that?
Okay.
Mike.
And then he handed the mic to the heat.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, that's my question. Why wait? I don't know if I'm going to marry you. Why would I wait to have that relationship with you? Why not?
Okay. So the first thing is, of course, it depends on where you are in life. Are you dating with the anticipation of looking for a wife, or are you just dating because you're having fun? So that's the first question. And if you're dating in a space where you just want to have fun, then you won't be having to ask why wait, because a woman who's not looking to get married is not going to make you wait. Okay. Then when we move into the other space, if you're dating, then I would think, and I would or suggest even, that you focus on getting to know who the person is, and the other stuff just kind of happens as it's supposed to happen, when it's supposed to happen. But anytime you put sex as the primary goal, rather than making the connection the primary goal, everything gets off kilter. Everything gets out of skew. And why? Because men and women are wired differently when it comes to sex. We're wired very differently when it comes to sex. One of the things, I was sitting in the gas station the other day, and this lady came up with these booty shorts on. And I really just wanted to yell out the window, can you just burn those, please? Okay, just burn them, okay? The problem that we have as women, we have definitely forgotten the value of our bodies. We've definitely forgotten the values of making sex sacred. So guess what? Our stock went down, okay? So the fact our stock went down because we're competing with the women in the videos with the booty shorts.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we're competing with the strip clubs. We're competing with the women that say make it rain. So guess what? I don't need to make it rain. You can't make it rain with me. So the value in waiting on me is because I can make my husband can make it rain for me. We can have a strip club. We can do a whole lot. But that's limited to a man who's given me the right, the freedom, and the safety to be the freak.
Those type of marriages are as strong, or they can be as strong, or have the same type of bonds that a traditional, even Christian marriage would have.
I think that, well, first let me say that I'm a relationship enthusiast. I'm not a relationship expert. So what I will tell you is that what I've seen, okay? I think that the first part of your question is it has to be answered from what are your spiritual belief systems? What's your system? Are you a Christian based? Are you Muslim based? Are you open? So that's the first question. And we're in the Bible Belt, so we're dealing with a heavy Christian population. So I'm going to say some things. I am Christian, but I'm going to say some things that I've seen that are successful that are not necessarily traditional. I've seen open marriages be successful. Am I a fan of them? Not for me personally. It wouldn't work, okay? But I've seen them work. I think that when you define what marriage is for you, okay, and your spouse, and I think that at this day and time you have to define what it is. I've seen it work. I've seen arranged marriages work. There are emotional attachments in all of those. So if we go with what the legal definition of, which is a man and a woman saying that they reside in the same household for a certain period of time, for a certain number of years, and they share expenses. If we go with the legal breakdown of it, do they work? The answer is yes, okay? Now, let's flip to the other side. From your belief system, does it work? And that's kind of how the question has to be answered. From where you believe, spiritually, emotionally, biblically, whether you're Christian or agnostic or Muslim, what does marriage look like in terms of what you are allowed? The open marriages wouldn't work for me personally, but I have several friends that have them, and they have had very successful relationships, and their commitment level is exactly the same as the ones who have more traditional relationships. So that really does have to be a personal decision, and I just try personally just not to judge what seems to work for other people.